everybody. Welcome back to the Windmill. I am Windstorm 64, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite Mario games. Enough said, let's get right into it. Number 10 is Donkey Kong 94 for the Game Boy. This is a misunderstood and highly underrated version of the classic arcade title after which this game is named. This game starts out just like the arcade version. You do have to complete all the original levels from that version in this game. Beyond that, however, is a totally new game with tons of new levels, game mechanics, boss fights, environments, etc. Those first levels from the original are only the beginning. The World 1, if you will. From what I've heard online, not a lot of people know about the extra levels. I distinctly remember having this game on the Game Boy back in the day, and really liking it. I found my old copy and got it working just for this video. And I have to say, this game holds up incredibly well for a Game Boy game. If you ever played Mario vs. Donkey Kong, the controls of this game will feel very familiar to you. I really feel this game is underrated and deserves more attention. I'd recommend it to basically anyone who likes video games, but it would probably appeal to you more if you like the original DK arcade, or Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the GBA. If you can, give it a try. Number 9 is Super Mario Bros. 2. To clarify, I am talking about the US version of Super Mario Bros. 2, not the Lost Levels, which is just the American name for the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2. But in regards to the US version, I could go into the history about how this game is just a rehash of a Japanese game, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to talk about the game itself. To start, Super Mario Bros. 2 was quite different from the first game. Instead of starting the game on a flat ground, moving to the right, you start literally falling from the sky, immediately introducing the vertical component of this game. In addition to more vertical stages, SMB2 allows the player to choose between 4 characters: Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toad, all of whom have unique attributes, and a couple even have special abilities. For example, Luigi can jump insanely high, and Peach can hover in the air for a while. I'm honestly not sure what good Mario and Toad are. I think Toad runs faster and Mario jumps a little bit higher, but neither seem to have any special abilities. This game introduced many mainstays as far as characters go. Enemies like the Shy Guy, Bob-Ombs, and Birdo all made their debut in Super Mario Bros. 2 and became somewhat regular characters in the series moving forward. The best way I can describe this game is that it is, in fact, a fun game, but it never quite felt like a Mario game to me. I mean, where's the Goombas, the Piranha Plants, Bowser? These guys don't make any appearance in this game as far as I know. Anyway, I still highly recommend this game if you've never played it. It's a different kind of Mario game that is fun in its own right. For number 8, we have 2 games, Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. As many people know, Super Mario Sunshine is the game where Mario goes on a vacation, gets a water pump, and goes from plumber to janitor overnight. All because he gets accused of vandalizing and polluting the local area. Super Mario Galaxy, on the other hand, takes Mario into outer space. This game combines the really cool idea of having Mario travel through space, and gives you some really interesting physics in regards to how the game handles gravity. I had a really hard time placing these two on the list. I couldn't bring myself to put Super Mario Sunshine over Galaxy, but I couldn't do the opposite either. As a result, I ultimately decided to place them at the same rank. Both games are very good when you look at them objectively. However, they both have flaws in different areas of gameplay. For instance, I prefer the overall feeling of the controls in Sunshine, but I prefer the overall movement set in Galaxy. It's somewhat difficult to explain, but basically I can't really decide which game I like more overall. It's probably Galaxy if I'm being honest, but one way or the other I'm putting both games here at number 8. I like both of these games a lot. I would recommend both. You really can't go wrong with either of these games. Number 7, the original Super Mario Bros. Maybe not the game that started it all, but it's definitely the game that started it all for me. If not for this game and Zelda 2, I don't think I would be as interested in video games as I am. These 2 games are the first I can remember playing. Super Mario Bros. Specifically though, I played a lot, whenever I could. Oddly, I always wanted to be player 2 as a kid because for whatever reason I liked playing as Luigi instead of Mario. I'm not really sure why, I guess I just liked his colors better or something. But I can remember more than one occasion where I was playing with my dad and he fell asleep playing as Mario, so I'd either have to wake him up or finish the stage myself just so I could keep playing as Luigi. Memories aside though, this game is still one of my favorites. I don't play it as much as I used to, but it's still nearby for whenever I get the itch. It's one of those games that just holds up. Maybe not as good as SMB3 or Super Mario World, but the game is still fun to play. It's incredibly simple in its concept and intuitive in its controls. I'd recommend it to anybody, even if you've never played a game before in your life. Number 6, Super Mario World. Definitely one of the Mario games that has aged the most gracefully. It is more or less my definition of a Mario game. And looking at games like New Super Mario Bros. U, you can still see many aspects of Super Mario World's influence. I remember playing this game way too much, and over the years I've acquired many copies of it. I have 5 normal Super Mario World carts, and I have a Super Mario All-Stars Plus World cart. I can also technically play it other ways too, but I don't feel like counting those. Coincidentally, an old friend of mine came by last week or something like that, and we played this game for a while. Much like many other Mario games, this one still holds up. It's almost better now as an adult than it was as a kid. Back then I couldn't wait until it was my turn to play, which I'm still kind of impatient sometimes, but these days it's kind of nice to take turns and watch someone else play for a bit. It's just good old-fashioned fun. The graphical style of Super Mario World, much like that of its predecessors, has endured the test of time and has managed to stay relevant, thanks to the strength of the design alone. Not only that, but the style has been recently reused in the Mario Maker games, which, spoiler warnings, I'll be talking about those later. But yeah, this is a great game, and if you like games at all, but for some reason haven't given this one a try, I highly recommend it. Number 5, Paper Mario and Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. These two games would also go on the list of games that have aged very gracefully, but this is another set of games that I had a hard time placing on the list because they sort of qualify as spin-off games, and I want to rate those separately. I decided, however, that I really don't give a shit. These two games are two of my favorite Mario games, period. They're going on the list. Okay. If you're somehow unaware, these two games are part of a series of turn-based RPGs based on Mario and, well, paper. In other words, these games' graphics are stylized to fit this paper aesthetic. Mario and other characters appear to be flat paper cutouts instead of three-dimensional models or polygons like you'd expect. I chose to put both games on the list in the same entry because, when played together, they feel like one continuous game, and frankly, I couldn't decide which one I like better. While I like the enhanced overall experience and gameplay in The Thousand-Year Door, I still like the setting and story of the original better. I'd recommend both games evenly. I'd start with the 64 version personally, but if you're somewhat new to games or just Paper Mario itself, the GameCube version is at least slightly more approachable for new players. Although both are similar enough that your skill in one game will mostly carry over to the other. As a side note, the only other Paper Mario game I played is The Origami King, the latest entry in the series. Long story short, I enjoyed the game, but it wasn't what I hoped for when I decided to pick up a new Paper Mario. It really feels like it should be its own series, and it feels nothing like the Paper Mario I know. Number 4 is Super Mario Maker 1 and 2. Now what can I say about Super Mario Maker games? They're some of my most played Mario games in the modern era, even more than games that are higher on this list. In fact, one of the first videos I ever made for YouTube was a Mario Maker video. I've made, I think 5 videos about Mario Maker if you want to check those out. They're a bit different from what I usually do, but shifting back to Mario Maker, this game caught me by surprise when I first heard about it. Then I played it myself and I was hooked. I spent a ton of time in the 3DS version. Then picked up the sequel when it came out, and last time I checked, I had put over 800 hours into that game. I have like 60 different completed courses. I have a few that I haven't finished. Several experimental stages specifically for video demonstrations. I even have a few stages that are recreations of Mario stages, or even stages from other games like Castlevania or Zelda. I've even remade almost all the stages I created on the 3DS version. As much as I love these games, I wasn't sure how to recommend them. I mean, if you're watching this video, I assume you at least like Mario. And if you like Mario, you will probably like this game. Even if you don't like making your own stages, both of these games have like 100 stages built into the game already. In other words, you're essentially getting a Mario game on top of being able to make your own Mario stages, or even full-on games in Mario Maker 2. I really couldn't recommend these games more. Number 3. Super Mario Odyssey. Super Mario Odyssey is basically what I wanted from both Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. The control in Odyssey is fantastic. Mario has most of his SM64 moveset plus some new moves, even if you don't include all the new abilities you get from Cappy. Cappy, if you don't know, is the little hat ghost that follows Mario throughout his journey. He not only serves to replace Mario's hat, but also gives him the ability to possess or capture many different creatures and enemies. Cappy is really what sets this game apart from other 3D Mario games. It's a fun and valuable addition to the gameplay that doesn't disrupt or change the established control scheme. The game almost feels like I'm playing SM64, but with slightly improved controls and more moves. It doesn't feel like some kind of weird motion control gimmick that replaces the standard controls, and it doesn't change the standard controls to accommodate something like Flood, for instance, in Super Mario Sunshine. Odyssey also improves on the collection mechanic. In older Mario games, you'd get a star or shine or whatever, and then you'd get kicked out of the stage. In some regards, that makes sense for those earlier games, but it's still redundant overall. In Odyssey, you can collect multiple moons in a single visit to a stage. It certainly cuts back on retreading old ground and stuff like that. Stuff that got really kind of boring in Super Mario 64. This game has some beautiful graphics that range from quite realistic to very stylized. My examples would be New Donk City and the Luncheon Kingdom. These two kingdoms feel like they come from completely different games, and that may well be one of my favorite aspects of this game. Such a range of different environments and stuff to see. I mean, it simultaneously pays tribute to all the Mario games that came before, while giving the player an all-new game with new gameplay, many new environments and enemies to interact with and look at. I'd recommend this game to anyone who's played any of the previous 3D Mario games. If you like those at all, you will definitely enjoy this game. Number 2, Super Mario Bros. 3. The decision to put Super Mario Bros. 3 here was not the easiest to make. Many would argue that Super Mario World is the superior game, and for the most part I'd have to agree. The graphics, gameplay, and presentation are top-notch even by today's standards. But I've already talked about Super Mario World. SMB 3 just had a much bigger impact on me personally. I was one of the many kids who was brainwashed by The Wizard, that old movie about video games that was really just an extended ad for Super Mario Bros. 3. I don't even remember the movie now, but I remember how much I wanted to play Mario 3 after I saw it. When I finally did play the game, it was like a dream come true. It's everything the first game was, plus more. It introduced flying into the Mario series. It was the first game to feature the now standard map screen that you see in Super Mario Bros. Games. This game also introduced several new power-ups. In addition to the Fire Flower from the original, you got things like the Feather, which give you the aforementioned power of flight. Also, this game introduced the Goomba Shoe, which is what I think of as the precursor to Yoshi. The Goomba Shoe works very similar to Yoshi when you break it down. You ride it, it takes damage for you, you can jump out of it for extra height, and there are other similarities as well. Yoshi is far more versatile and comes in different types, but they are very similar in their basic concept. Super Mario Bros. 3 also introduced things like Toad Houses and the Koopa Kids, which endure to this day. Now, personally, I really like the graphic style of Super Mario Bros. 3, but I wouldn't claim that it's aged as well as Super Mario World. But when it comes to controls, you really can't go wrong with either game. SMB3 is a bit more simple in its controls, but the levels themselves become incredibly complex in comparison. All in all, I couldn't recommend Super Mario Bros. 3 more, and while I would put SMW higher on the list of recommendations, SMB3 goes higher on this list of my favorites. Number 1. Super Mario 64. I could make many videos on this game talking for hours and not saying a goddamn thing. When it comes to video games in general, this is one of the ones I know best. Up until a few years ago, I was really only an average fan of this game. You know, played it as a kid, came back to it regularly, but it never went much deeper than that. Then a few years back, I decided to try my hand at speedrunning the game. At first, I was just learning speedrunning tech and a few other things, but eventually I discovered a channel called Pan & Coic 2012, as well as its sister channel, Uncommentated Panin. If you don't know who this is and you want to learn all about Super Mario 64, these are the channels to watch. Panin has hours of content breaking down different aspects of Super Mario 64. This includes glitch explanations, speedrunning tech, and even detailed descriptions of how different things are programmed and how they work. For example, I remember seeing a video where he breaks down what determines when and how frequently characters blink, and as boring as that sounds, it was incredibly interesting. Another example is the Walls, Floors, and Ceilings series of videos. In these videos, Pannon explains the inner workings of the games in regards to, well, walls, floors, and ceilings. Again, it sounds boring, and if you told me a decade ago that I'd happily spend over an hour watching a video series called Walls, Floors, and Ceilings, I wouldn't have believed you. So once I discovered this channel, I began to watch religiously for a couple of years. During that time, my knowledge of the game expanded tenfold. All these new discoveries, as well as the skill I had gained from learning some of the speedrunning tech, opened the game up and really gave it a second life for me. A game that I had largely got bored of once again felt fresh and new to me. With all that aside, I could go on a tangent about how influential and groundbreaking this game was. I could talk about the dichotomy between the simple graphics, the simple level design, and the incredibly complex gameplay. I could even talk about how the control in this game is so sophisticated that it is still really fun and feels supernatural to pick up and play, even by today's standards. Every time I talk about the controls in a 3D Mario game, I always compare them to this game. For instance, Sunshine's control was closer to SM64 in its overall feel, but it took away moves to accommodate FLUDD. Galaxy had a near identical moveset to Super Mario 64, but the controls felt sluggish and clunky by comparison. That is the exact reason why Odyssey is placed so high on the list. The control in that game felt so much like SM64 that my experience was enhanced by just how familiar it felt to play. It made it easier to get used to all the new stuff that Odyssey introduced. Mario 64 does have a few flaws, however, some that are actually really frustrating. Although I still like the camera controls personally, the camera itself can be frustrating, especially in cramped stages like Tick-Tock Clock, or when the game doesn't let you control the camera at all like in Big Boo's Haunt. This game also has a few stages that are just really boring. Stages that have little to no substance, like Dire Dire Docks, The Secret Aquarium, and Wing Mario Over the Rainbow. I know some people might disagree, but I think almost every other stage is at least somewhat fun. Even stages most people dislike, such as Wet Dry World, which ironically is one of my favorite courses as an adult, even though I hated it when I was young. All in all, much like Super Mario Bros. 3, this game had a massive impact on me. It blew my mind as a kid playing it for the first time, and it blew my mind as an adult with its surprisingly complex depth. This game is worth picking up and trying out for the controls alone. Something else about this game that I think gets overlooked these days is its intro. So many games today expect the player to sit through a long intro cinematic that sets up the plot and introduces the characters, and in a lot of cases, it can be a detriment to the game itself. With the exception of games like Paper Mario, I expect minimal plot from a Mario game, and I usually expect to be dropped into the gameplay without much instruction. This game is no exception. It takes only a little over a minute to get to the actual gameplay, and there are no intrusive tutorials to play through. You can read the various signs for tips, but you don't have to. I really wish more modern games opened like this. Anyway, like I said at the beginning of this entry, I could talk for hours about this game, and will almost certainly talk about it again in a future video. But for now, that's all I have to say. Go play some Mario games. You won't regret it. And with that, we conclude this top 10 list. To be honest, I wanted to have this video out on March 10th for Mario Day, but the video ended up being a bit more work than I was expecting, and I just didn't have time to finish it fast enough. Sorry for that. Anyway, let me know what your favorite Mario games are and why. I'm interested in hearing your opinions. Anyway, thank you everyone so much for watching. As always, take it easy, and I'll see you next time.